Mamayanatmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshornidanyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. My Dandavat pranams to all of the assembled Vaishnavas. Today is a happy day, very happy day. We are, you could say, what is officially the happiest day of our year. Because Shri Gaur Purnima is approaching, Gaur Avirbhav, the divine appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is a very, very glorious day, a very wonderful day. This is actually our new year, right? This is the new year for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, when the golden moon of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared into this world. Yeah, next week we're approaching. Is it Monday? Let me see what day it is. It's the 3rd, right? Yeah, what
It's
day
on
is
Wednesday.
Yeah, I was thinking Wednesday, exactly. Wait, what month are we in? March. Wait, is it
I'm just thinking because
Tuesday
they're
or?
having
Oh, it's actually
it's
Tuesday. So we were all wrong.
Saturday and
Yeah.
Monday.
Tuesday for you, Vishamanu. Tuesday for all of us. I love your diplomacy. That's brilliant. You should be a diplomat. Yeah, it's actually Tuesday. But what I mean to say is we're now in the run up to that. So today's actually, because it's like a week-long festival, more or less, and um so today is the Adivas day of the Nabadwīp Dhām Parikrama, right? Oh wow, Suvasini is also joining us. What a wonderful gathering. Suvasini Didi, so happy to have you with us. Our meeting just got upgraded with your holy presence.
Oh, Dandavad. Dandavad.
Dandavat,
Good to see you.
Suvasini.
It's long.
Dandavat, Suvasini. Yeah, today is definitely a celebration. So many wonderful Vaishnavas are here. And we were just mentioning, Didi, today is the Adivas Day, as you know, of course, of Sri Nabadwīp Dhām Parikrama. So today's the
Are
day
you
when
still
it
in
all starts.
Navadvip, Didi?
No,
Are you still
I'm
in?
not in Nabadwīp. I was in Nabadwīp for the Gaur Purnima celebration every year for, let me see, how many years? Almost 20 years. Maybe like
Wow.
17 years, 17 years. But then I think it was 2019 was no, so now maybe 15 years I was there every year. But then it just became too much, the crowd and the noise and yeah. So after 2019, I decided from now on I will go before Gaur Purnima. Um, and yeah, and I'm honoring in my heart, That's my situation. And also now our mission, it has branched in many ways. And so it's hard for me to decide, which group to go to, because I have friends in all of the groups. So it's hard for me to pick. So some people get upset at me, you should be there for Gaur Purnima, but what can I do? I honor in my heart, But no, I'm in South India now. I'm on another health attempting mission, you could say. So my lifeline right now is these online meetings. But I remember well, how electric the atmosphere was, especially when our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, was present, and I remember he used to come down on this day, I came in the last phase of Srila Govinda Maharaj's pastimes in this world, and so I wasn't there when he was showing himself in a more active and dynamic way, but still I got to witness, he would still, even in those last years when he was showing poor health, he would still come down, at least on the very first morning today, in the early morning, to see everybody off, to bless the Parikrama. And so I remember he would come down and give his respects to Param Guru Maharaj, to the deities, and bless all of the devotees and see them off, and so we go down. Really, such a glorious experience, and I hope if anyone here hasn't had that experience yet, that one day you can have it. There's nothing quite like that. Going out early in the morning, we'd be leaving by around 5:30 maybe maximum. Walking, dancing, chanting, hundreds and hundreds of devotees all together, singing the holy names, and walking for miles and miles and miles. And it's quite extraordinary because somehow when the whole atmosphere just kind of carries you, because I've now when I go back to Nabadwip, I still try to do some Parikrama and, with a small group, but we don't feel the energy to walk so many miles, we're doing some walking, but otherwise, taking rickshaws here and there and to different places. And the idea of walking all that way just seems inconceivable, because really it's miles and miles, and you could every day there would be like longer routes and shorter routes. But on the longer route, I mean, depending on whether you're going like for the full, the extreme version of Parikrama, or the light, Parikrama light, or Parikrama extra, right? So, in other words, there'd be like the hardcore group that would come back usually around 7 p.m. walking the whole way. And then there'd be another group who'd maybe come back around halfway and come back earlier, right? But anyhow, now when I go back, it just seems inconceivable. How could we walk so many miles like that? But somehow when you're with that big group all together, there's this atmosphere that's very powerful, and you just have the strength, you have the inspiration, you have the momentum to do what seems impossible. And so I forgot what I was going to say next, but really, truly, such a wonderful experience. In the hot sun, very, very wonderful, very intense experience. So today is the Adivas day, right? Means the day before, right? Because in the, in our culture, we worship everything that is connected with the Lord, right? And so the time we're connected, we're honoring the time of his appearance, and there's also honoring before the time, right? So for very big festivals, we have what is called the Adivas, right? Which literally means like the first day, but it's like the day before, right? So we're honoring the time before, and then also the time after too, because there's just so much wonderfulness in everything. So today is the Adivas, and so there would be a special program in the evening, right? Like an inauguration of the festival. And then tomorrow, early in the morning, then the Parikrama would begin, and all the devotees would go out, and will go out, tomorrow it's all going to happen in Nabadwip. So, and then there's 4 days of Parikrama, right? Visiting the 9 islands, right? For those who aren't familiar, Nabadwīp, right, means 9 islands. This is the spiritual vision of what is Nabadwīp, the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so in the course of these 4 days, and there are different versions of the Parikrama that are mentioned and that are practiced. Oh, thank you so much, Ananda Krishna. That's wonderful. Yeah, so these are the 9 islands. So there are different versions of the Parikrama. You know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks, I think he mentions a 2-week Parikrama. Maybe someone here can remember. He mentions different versions of it because there are so many places, right? So it's a matter of you know, selecting which places you're going to visit. And so different missions have different versions of the Parikrama. And the Parikrama that we have done in our mat, as I understand, was selected by Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So he chose which places we will go to. And so 4 days, I believe, is relatively short. You know, as I said, I think there's a 2-week version. I think ISKCON may do a 1-week version. I'm not sure. But anyhow, in these 4 days, then we're visiting the most important places connected with Mahaprabhu's pastimes and different leelas throughout the ages which have taken place in Nabadwip. And so our temple, who can, well, I think most of you probably know, maybe it's a silly test question.
Nabadwīp.
Yes. Well, Ramanand, you even knew my question before I asked it, so you get full points. Exactly. Which island is our mat? Koladweep. And great, nice work, nice zooming in work. So Koladweep. And you'll see under there Pada Sevanam, which means serving the feet, means serving the Lord, right? Because each of these 9 islands, they're also connected, they're associated with the 9 practices of devotion, right? The 9 practices of devotion, Nava Vidya Bhakti, which have been expressed by Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam. And so the island where Srila Sridhar Maharaj chose to establish his mission, that is Koladweep, and the limb of devotion, surrender, Pada Sevanam. And so tomorrow is the first day of Parikrama, and we would traditionally go to Antardweep, which is the heart of Nabadwip. Why? Because that is the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as was identified by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And that island is associated with Atma Nivedanam, which is the foundational form of devotion, practice of devotion, full self-giving, full self-surrender, Atma Nivedanam. And so that is the place of Mahaprabhu's birth, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur uncovered, right? Because we hear that since Mahaprabhu's appearance, because of the way that the Ganges River moves, then different areas of land would get covered over. Then the Ganges would move again, and again that land would become uncovered. So because of the way that the Ganges moves like this, that the exact place of Mahaprabhu's birth had become lost. And so it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur who, through his inner heart inspiration, through his research, and through confirmation from other sadhus, especially Jagannath Das Babaji, that he was able to identify and confirm that, this is the actual birthplace of Mahaprabhu. And he established that as a place of worship. You see over here, Nabadwīp, associated with the practice Kirtanam. So Nabadwīp is the island. It's so nice to have a visual aid, isn't it? So this Nabadwīp, this is the island where Bhaktivinoda Thakur was staying when he first had this vision of Antardvīp, which is nowadays known as Mayapur, right? And many of you will know it as Mayapur. He had this vision of a golden city. And if you go to Nabadwīp, you'll see, right? So all of these islands, right, nowadays they're not physically all individual islands. Perhaps they were in the past, I'm not exactly sure. But there are still some separate islands. And so Mayapur is on a separate island. Nabadwīp is on a separate island. You have to go by boat or bridge. And then Nabadwīp is also on another island. And to this day, you can go, and some of us were just there a few weeks ago, by the grace of Guru and Gauranga. And you can go to Nabadwīp, and there's a Gaudiya Math that Srila Saraswati Thakur established, because Saraswati Thakur, he had the vision to establish a Gaudiya Math on each of the 9 islands, and which he did with the exception of Koladvip, right? And that was one reason why Srila Sridhar Maharaj wanted to make a mission there, because there had been a lot of opposition from some of the local pundits, the local scholars. But then also the Devananda Gaudiya Math was also established by Keshav Maharaj, right? So what I was coming to say, so Nabadwīp, Saraswati Thakur established a Gaudiya Math there on that island, and also in the exact place where Bhaktivinoda Thakur stayed, right? There were 2 places where Bhaktivinoda Thakur stayed in Nabadwīp. So there's one place which is now a Gaudiya Math, and there's a small room which you can go into and give your respects, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur stayed. And you can literally see, you could just walking off, not far at all, just a few meters, you can go to the banks of this island. It's on the actual property of the Gaudiya Math. And you can look across and see Mayapur, just practically like a stone's throw. It's not that far. But just across the Ganga. So it's quite extraordinary, to be able to stand there and to think, oh, this is the soil, that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur stood on, and where he had this divine revelation, right? And so we hear that he had this vision of a golden city, right? Looking across at Mayapur, he had this vision of a golden city. And so this was one of the points of confirmation for him that, oh, this is the place. So looking across the way, he's seeing Mayapur, Antardvīp, and understanding, oh, this is the place of Mahaprabhu's birth. And then later on, he moved to his own place, and there's a residence there, Swananda Sukara Kunj, it is called, right? And there his deities are there. This is just walking down like 10 minutes from that little place where he stayed. Then later he moved to this other place, and that was like a bigger residence, and so that was where he spent more time and his deities are there. There's a Pushpa Samadhi. There's a deity of Bhaktivinoda Thakur there. And then there are also his deities, Gaur Gadadhar deities are there, still worshipped to this day. So that is quite extraordinary. So, right, so that is Antardvip. So tomorrow is the day when we would go to Antardvip, Mayapur, and now it's become so built up, right? Of course, the presence of ISKCON is a big part of that, but there's also so many Gaudiya missions there, and lots of other things going on too, like lots of shopping and restaurants, and it's become highly commercialized. So it's probably the busiest and most commercialized part of amongst the whole of these 9 islands. Partly, yes, because of the presence of ISKCON, but also, and I've mentioned this before, but it's not so widely known that this is also largely part to do with Srila Sridhar Maharaj's vision, because he had the vision, because now there's not only ISKCON, but so many of the important branches of the Gaudiya mission, they all have their temples there. They all have branches there. And this was Srila Sridhar Maharaj's vision, actually, that because previously it was kind of like a jungle, and it was not only that, but it was kind of dangerous, there were a lot of rogues and thieves who would wander. It was a little dangerous, and we hear that at the Chaitanya Mat, which was, so the Chaitanya Mat, that was what Srila Saraswati Thakur established as the headquarters of his grand mission, right, with its 64 temples all over India. So Chaitanya Mat was known as the mother Mat, the Mula Mat, the headquarters of this whole mission. And those deities are still worshipped there. Shri Shri Gu Grang Gandharvika Giridhari, most extraordinary and very unusual, beautiful deities, those deities. And Saraswati Thakur, his samadhi is there also at the Chaitanya Mat. And so, but we hear at a certain point, like things were, when Saraswati Thakur was trying to establish that temple, there was so much trouble with the locals, and there was a lot of money that was owed to the temple for some reason, and it was just difficult, navigating the practical aspect of running a temple, running a mission there. And we hear that Saraswati Thakur requested, who later became Keshav Maharaj, right? And now Keshav Maharaj, he's the one who, he took sannyas from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and then later, when Srila Swami Maharaj, Prabhupada, went to Srila Sridhar Maharaj for sannyas, Srila Sridhar Maharaj sent him to Keshav Maharaj. And that Devananda Gaudiya Mat, which I mentioned earlier, that was established by Keshav Maharaj also. And he was known as like a very like kind of fierce and fearless, tough person, Vaishnava. And so he was a brahmachari, right, before he was a sannyas. He took sannyas later, right, from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, but in the time of Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur, he was a brahmachari. And we hear that at a certain point, Saraswati Thakur requested him if he could take on the management at the Chaitanya Mat in Mayapur, because it was just so difficult to run things. He needed someone like tough, and so his name was Vinod at that time, right? And so we hear, the story goes that Saraswati Thakur requested him to take on the management, to deal with all these difficult elements in Mayapur. And Vinod, he agreed. And he said, but on one condition, he said, I have to take off my brahmachari cloth. Because he said, if I'm a brahmachari, I have to behave like a gentleman. He said, I cannot beat people, if I'm in brahmachari cloth. And so with Saraswati Thakur's permission, he took off his brahmachari cloth, and took back on white cloth, and yeah, so he said, I'm not Vinod Brahmachari anymore. I'm Vinod Babu, and I'm ready to beat anyone. Ramananda Prabhu, you're something you want to say?
Yeah, was he Kunj Babu? Later he known as Kunj Babu.
No. Kunja Babu, that's somebody else. Kunja Babu, he later became Tirtha Maharaj. And yeah, Kunja Babu, he was like the big manager of the Gaudiya Math. It was Anantava, the two big names in the Gaudiya Math, right? One was Ananta Vasudev, and he was known as like the Siddhanta man. He was very expert in the philosophy, and he was good friends with Srila Sridhar Maharaj in the time of the Gaudiya Math. And then, so the Ananta Vasudev was like on one side, and then on the other side was this Kunja Babu. Kunja Bihari maybe was his name, full name. Everyone knew him as Kunja Babu. And Kunja Babu's expertise was in management. And he was so beloved to Saraswati Thakur. He was known as Guru Preshta, who is most beloved, because he did everything, everything that Saraswati Thakur could not do in terms of the practical side of things. Kunja Babu did that. And Saraswati Thakur was so pleased about that. He was so pleased about that. So yeah, that Kunja Babu. And then later on, when there was I was trying to remember, this is what it was, this one expression of Saraswati Thakur about Kunja Babu. He said that, all I want is an educated audience. And he provides that for me, Kunja Babu, he provides that for me. And then at another time, there was another incident when all these complaints came against him because something was a little off with the finances. We won't go into it now. But Saraswati Thakur said, I don't care what he's doing with the money. He said, I'm so appreciative of the service that he's done. And he said, even if everybody leaves and only he stayed, we could do everything again. We can start everything again. So that's Kunja Babu. And then later on, he became Tirtha Maharaj. He took sannyas after Saraswati Thakur left the world, and he became Tirtha Maharaj. And then when there was the big split, right after Saraswati Thakur left the world, and then there was this big split in the Gaudiya Math, and it was Srila Sridhar Maharaj who negotiated, like after 12 years of court cases, it was Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and that tells you something about Srila Sridhar Maharaj's position. It was Srila Sridhar Maharaj who negotiated the harmony between these groups. And the two groups were Ananta Vasudeva and Kunja Babu, right? And so it was Srila Sridhar Maharaj who harmonized all of that. So anyhow, that's Kunja Babu. But then Vinod, he's the one who was the manager of Chaitanya Math for some time, and then later became Keshav Maharaj, right? So anyhow, what I was saying is that this Mayapur, right, it was a challenging environment. And then later on, it was Srila Sridhar Maharaj who had this vision that this should be like a very dignified place. And because this is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, this should be like all of the principal leading preachers in Saraswati Thakur's mission, they should all have a place here, right? And so in many cases, Srila Sridhar Maharaj like directly either pushed his godbrothers to buy a plot of land or even like bought it for them and then gave it to them, and then they paid him back. Like he really pushed them, including Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada. That was Srila Sridhar, but Srila Swami Maharaj, he was reluctant. Swami Maharaj did not, because he didn't have so much support from his godbrothers. He didn't want to, push his way in, or to want to be seen like that. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj pushed him, like, no, you must have a place here. And he sent Srila Govinda Maharaj to, to help him make the deal, with the land. And I believe Srila Govinda Maharaj even bought it for him, something like that. But in any case, he was instrumental in helping him to get that place. And like now you go and it's such a huge, grand place, and that is the fact, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was behind that and really pushed Swami Maharaj Prabhupada to get that place. So that was Srila Sridhar Maharaj's vision. And so you see today, all of these leading preachers, Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj, Bhakti Daita Madhav Maharaj, Jajvar Maharaj, I believe he has a place there. So many of them, they all have their place there. And so it's made it really like the center, like the heart, as it should be, as the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so by the grace of our gurus, and especially Bhakti Thakur, we can go exactly to the neem tree, right, where Mahaprabhu was born. We can, and really, 500 years ago, it's not that long ago. So it's really not that long ago. And so, we can give our respects right there, that tree, on that soil, where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared as young Nimai, right, as baby Nimai, just over 500 years ago. And so tomorrow will be the day of visiting there. And on that tomorrow, then we would visit some of these Gaudiya mats, and remember some of the glories of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's godbrothers. And oh, very nice. We have another visual aid here. Oh, that looks like a winter picture. Because actually it's in more there's a lot more foliage on it at the moment. But anyhow, that is the tree. Thank you very much. That looks like an old picture, huh? Nice. Looks a little more untouched. Now that building behind it's become a lot busier, and things for sale and things like that. But anyhow. And then also there's these Gaudiya mats, and there's also Yoga Pit, right? That's the name of this place of Mahaprabhu's birth. And then also the Chaitanya Mat is there. And then there's many other important and special places like Srivas Angam, which was the heart, right, of Mahaprabhu's Nabadwip Leela, right? Srivas Angam was where these like intimate night kirtan gatherings would take place. That was, Mahaprabhu, he at a certain point had started the Sankirtan movement, right? And he was beginning, with Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur as his two great generals. Mahaprabhu had inaugurated this movement of Harinam Sankirtan. And so, there was so much kirtan going on in a public way and in a very inclusive way. But then separately, there was also this more exclusive and intimate group that Mahaprabhu would gather with at the home of Shiva Sangam, which is the few, right? And so, and it was in those gatherings when Mahaprabhu would like just let himself go, and to really vent his heart and vent his feelings, his feelings of ecstatic emotion, love and separation, all these different moods he would freely express. But in order for him to be able to feel so free, it had to be a very select group, right? Because if there was anyone who was felt to be an outsider, who couldn't understand his inner heart, then Mahaprabhu felt inhibited, right? And so we hear of different pastimes, right? Where was it Srivas Thakur's mother, I think, or was it his grandmother who
Mother-in-law.
his mother-in-law, she came and hid in a basket because she really, really wanted to be a part of this exclusive group, But Mahaprabhu could feel it, he could feel there was an element in the atmosphere that was a little jarring, And so he stopped the kirtan and he has to know, who's here. Somebody's hiding here. And she was exposed. And we also hear of that one Brahmin who was very upset because, he was a great renunciate. He lived on milk, and he thought that made him eligible to join these kirtans, and he was very offended when Mahaprabhu told him he could not join. So he cursed Mahaprabhu to lose his material life. And Mahaprabhu was very happy. Thank you very much. I've been thinking about that point, these last few days, how with spiritual vision, everything is adjusted, and in Bhagavad Gita, the beginning of, is it the beginning of chapter 2 or chapter 3? Where I think chapter 2, right? Where it says Arjuna's crying, right? He's just been in the middle of the battlefield and seeing, these two armies in conflict, but they're actually friends and relatives in the normal world, and understandably he's overcome by lamentation and he tells Krishna, "Oh, I cannot fight," right? And then it's describing, Arjuna's sitting, trembling, tears coming out of his eyes, he's overcome by sorrow, and Krishna's smiling. Krishna's smiling, right? And I always think of that, it's like a perfect illustration, right, of spiritual vision versus material vision, right? In material vision, there must be lamentation because material vision is focused on what is temporary, right? So inevitably, there must be lamentation, there must be sorrow, because that which is material has an end, right? Has an expiry date. So, but in spiritual vision, one is always connected with eternity, with eternal principles, with the eternal aspect of things. And so there's no end to anything. So there's no reason for lamentation, right? In material vision, we are connecting with what is finite, with what is limited. So there's not enough, or it has to end, or there are so many things that will come to obstruct our reveling with the material energy, right? But in the spiritual connection, we're dealing with infinity and eternity. there's no reason for lamentation, right? And so that moment with Krishna and Arjuna, it's a perfect depiction of this, right? The material and spiritual experience, right? So in spiritual vision, there's never any reason for sorrow. And if there is sorrow, that is only enhancing the joy, right? It is coming with a higher purpose and another type of sweetness. So everything is adjusted. So anyhow, it is Antardweep, and also on that day, we go to the Jagannath temple. There's a Jagannath temple there in Mayapur as well, which is said to be, those deities are said to be non-different from the deities in Jagannath Puri. And many other places there. We also visit the island of Simantadweep on that day, and that is a place where Parvati Devi came and received the special blessings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then on the second day of Parikrama, that's like a local Parikrama for our mat, because we visit the what is now known as Nabadwip locally in the area around our temple. And so there's a Buduraj Shiv, there's an ancient Shiva deity that we will visit. Puramatala, right? Puramatala is known as like the central shopping area, town center, but it is also that Purama is actually referring to a form of Durga Devi, right? And so it's an extraordinary banyan tree. It's really quite extraordinary, huge. Actually, it's like a few, maybe two or three. And there's this whole marketplace and also temples. There's like two or three little temples all underneath somehow. It's extraordinary, and it's impossible to describe. And in a couple of places you see the roots of the tree like growing around these little temples in this area. But it's also like a covered marketplace, so it's not that easy to really see what's going on unless you're at a certain angle. But anyhow, oh wow, Ananda Krishna Prabhu, you are such a star. Look at that. Amazing. Yeah, thank you very much. That's a brilliant picture of what I could not describe. A picture speaks 1,000 words. It's really the truth. Yeah, so this is one point, and there's actually a few points like this. That's a perfect illustration of what I was trying to say. So then off to the side, then there's also there's like two or three temples dedicated to Purama, who is a form of Parvati or Durga Devi, the consort of Lord Shiva. And so Lord Shiva and Parvati, they have this special position as protectors, right, of the holy Dham, as guardians and protectors of the holy Dham. And these deities, the Buduraj, Shiva, and they're not together, they're not so far, maybe like 10-15 minute walk from each other. There's the Shiva temple, and then there's the Purama temple. And we hear that these deities were originally in Mayapur, right? But because of the way that the Ganges moves, right, those deities were moved across to the island of Koladweep. Yeah, so when you look in Navadvip Mahatmya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, and that's another thing which we have to remember at this time, this one wonderful, extraordinary text which came as revelation from the heart of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Nabadwīp Dhām Mahatmya, the glories of Sri Nabadwīp Dhām. It's Bhaktivinoda Thakur who's revealing all of these places, and that's coming from like direct revelation in his heart, right? And no doubt there are some things that are described in other texts and other scriptures, but largely this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur seeing in his inner heart Jiva Goswami, right? So in this Nabadwīp Mahatmya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is describing Jiva Goswami, Nityananda Prabhu taking Jiva Goswami, right? Jiva Goswami was young boy, maybe like 15 years old. He's the nephew, right, of Rupa and Sanatan. And they're all from East Bengal, what is now Bangladesh. He leaves home to go meet with Mahaprabhu and see his uncles. Of course, Mahaprabhu's already left the world, sadly. And then so he comes to Nabadwip, and he's not able to have the darshan of Mahaprabhu. He's already left. But Nityananda Prabhu's there. And Nityananda Prabhu mercifully takes him by the hand and takes him to all of the places of Mahaprabhu's pastimes throughout these 9 islands of Nabadwip. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur has this like live stream darshan of this extraordinary, like the first Nabadwip Parikrama that takes place with Nityananda taking Jiva Goswami. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur is witnessing that in his inner heart, his inner eye, and describing that, this revelation. It's pouring out in the form of words and sentences in the Bengali language, which we are so privileged to be able to read, in beautiful Bengali poetry. And so, right, so that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur for you. So he describes there in Nabadwīp Mahatmya that these deities are in Mayapur, right? But later we understand that they came across because of the Ganges flooding the area. They came to Koladweep. And then, so this day, this is now we're discussing the second day of Parikrama, right? Then this is like a short day, right? Traditionally, it was a short day. It would be like we'd be back by noon or even before. So then we went to this ancient Shiva temple. We went to Purama, Tala, and then also a very, very special place, the place of Vishnu Priya's own deity of Mahaprabhu, right? Dhameshwar. And this is actually this temple. And it's interesting, like all of a sudden this temple's become so popular, right? Because, I've been going more or less every year, except I missed last year, but otherwise I've been going every year for like 20 years. And suddenly it's become so popular, that temple. Like one of the most popular and famous places in Nabadwip, which is wonderful to see. Even like I experience sometimes when you're in the town, rickshaw drivers will rickshaw drivers, they know all the popular places. So they'll ask pilgrims, oh, you want to go here? You want to go there? And a few times I experienced, they'd ask you, Vishnu Priya's temple, And when you go, it's always so crowded. They've even started charging tickets. Jai Shri Dhameshwar Mahaprabhu ki Jai. So extraordinarily beautiful. This is the personal deity of Vishnu Priya Devi, Mahaprabhu's consort. So beautiful. And we hear Srila Sridhar Maharaj took some inspiration from this deity when he was having his own deity of Mahaprabhu manifest at our mat, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat mat. And I think most of you know that story, so we hear, Mahaprabhu's left his beautiful young wife. She was like 15 or 16 years old, and she's lost her beloved. She's heartbroken. And so she wanted to worship a deity of her Lord, and to be able to continue to feel his presence in a more tangible way in her life. And so we hear that she had, she commissioned this deity, and we hear the first deity that came from the Murti Wala, as they're called, she did not accept, And, normally this is not, you don't do that. You don't say no, to a deity. Like if a deity comes, you accept, right? You don't do that. That's like not an okay thing to do. But for Vishnu Priya, it was, she's like an exception, So she didn't accept, that she didn't feel that her Lord was present in that deity. And so we hear she rejected that deity. And then he brought another deity. And again, she rejected that deity. Then the third time, she felt his presence, and it's said that she covered her head, because traditionally wives will do that in front of their husband. And she felt, oh, here is my Lord, and she covered her head and she accepted that deity. And so that deity was actually, this deity was originally worshipped in Mayapur, but then later, as I've heard, after Vishnu Priya left, because Vishnu Priya resided with Shachi Mata, as I understand, in Mayapur to the end of her days, and worshipped this deity, and also these shoes, because we hear there was this other incident, right, when because Mahaprabhu came back to Nabadwip once. There's this restriction for sannyasis that they cannot go back to the place of their birth. They may visit one time after 5 years. Mahaprabhu did that. And it's for he could meet with his mother, but it's forbidden for the sannyasi to meet with his previous wife. And so Mahaprabhu did not stop to visit her, but we hear that he passed by what was their home, and she was like standing in the doorway, this very like forlorn figure, ragged cloth, she was barely eating anything, right? We hear Vishnu Priya, she would eat by chanting on grains of rice, right? And what little pile of rice she collected, that's what she would eat, right? So she's this forlorn, ragged figure, and Mahaprabhu passed by the gate a little bit of a distance, did not look at her, but left his shoes there for her, right? To give her some token. And so she took those shoes, and so those shoes, they're said to be the same shoes, they're also worshipped with that deity Mahaprabhu to this day. But we hear, so after Vishnu Priya left the world, then that deity was brought to what was actually the family home of Vishnu Priya. So the compound of their family home where she grew up, that's where that deity was brought and where that worship is going on to this day. And so that's on the island where our mat is, not so far from our temple. And we're so fortunate that we can still go and have darshan there to this day. Dhameshwar, he's known as Dhameshwar Mahaprabhu. So that would be on the second day of Parikrama. And then the other place we would go, what would be the conclusion, is the place of Jagannath Das Babaji, right? His samadhi is there, his bhajan kutir, And there's a temple there, a charming temple also. And so we would also go there on this day at the conclusion of the second day of Parikrama. Then the third day we would go Nabadwīp. So we would take a boat. You can go by, no, actually we didn't go by boat. You can go by boat, but we would walk there actually, which is a longer route. We would go across the Gauranga Setu bridge early morning, and we would walk the whole way, like going around and take a bridge. It's a much longer route. We would walk there to go Nabadwīp. So the third day, that's the island we discussed earlier, right, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur stayed and had that vision. So we would go Nabadwīp. So we would go to this place of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There's also a pastime, because another thing, right, is that Nabadwīp, it's not, we tend to think of it in like a more recent, in terms of a more recent period, but Nabadwīp has its eternal position actually, and so there are different pastimes throughout the ages that we hear of, different great personalities, Parvati, who we mentioned earlier, Lord Shiva, and many others. They all have some relationship with Nabadwīp, and we hear, and it's quite a wonderful thing, like we hear of different personalities, like Surabi, who now I'm coming to mention. Surabi, who is the special heavenly cow, the cow of Lord Indra, right? If I'm not mistaken, who gives unlimited milk, right? She also went there, right? So this is what I'm coming to say. It's really quite wonderful to contemplate that we hear of all these personalities throughout the ages who are anticipating the appearance of Mahaprabhu. So, we've heard Gauranga Mahaprabhu is going to appear here. I will go there, right? We hear this in many different cases, like Surabi cow, like Parvati Devi, I believe Lord Shiva also, and others. And so they're coming and anticipating the appearance of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, praying to receive his mercy and receiving some special darshan. There were several other cases too that are mentioned in Navadvip Mahatmya, but I don't want to say the names without being 100% sure.
Jayadev Goswami also.
Yeah, Jayadev Goswami, did he have vision of Mahaprabhu? I'm not. Jayadev Goswami lived there. You're right. That's another important point of significance. Jayadev Goswami, the great Vaishnava poet, he lived in Nabadwip, right? Later on, he moved to Orissa, right? But he actually spent time in Nabadwip. But I don't know if he had darshan or he had knowledge of Mahaprabhu appearing. Maybe, I can't remember. Maybe it's possible. But there are several great personalities. But this is the point, right? That it's so extraordinary to think that they're all coming there and anticipating, like they're waiting. Like how blessed are we? How fortunate are we? Like we've all been born into this period, which is so close, just a few hundred years ago. So many great persons of the ages, they've been waiting for that moment when Shigora Avirbhav will take place in this world, right? And now we can go to that place, and that current is still fresh. That current is still flowing in this world. We can go there and see, this is where he was. And, we can hear of all these very recent personalities and just a few decades ago, these great personalities with their relationship with Mahaprabhu and his lineage. So it's such an extraordinary time, actually. So right, so we go to and Gojramadweep, right? We're on the third day now, and so that island of Gojramadweep and that Gaudiya Math I mentioned, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur stayed, what became a Gaudiya Math, that's also the place where we hear this heavenly cow, Sarabi, came and received the blessings of Mahaprabhu. There's some commemoration of her and that pastime there. Then we would also go to Harihara Kshetra, very unique deity, representing a merging of Sada Shiva and Mahavishnu, half Shiva, half Vishnu deity, right? Which is commemorating that pastime with Mohini Murti, right? When Lord Vishnu appeared as Mohini Murti to support the devas when there's this quarrel going on over the churning of the ocean of milk, and there's the pot of Amrita, which will give immortality to whoever drinks it. And so the devas and the asuras, and you can see it actually for anyone who's been through Bangkok International Airport, you'll see there's a wonderful diorama, if that's the right word. If there's a big 3D depiction of that. By the way, if anyone's going through Bangkok, look out for that. So the devas and asuras, and then there's Kurma Dev, right? Who's like the in the middle of it all, holding up the stone they're using. And then is it Ananta Shesh, who's the serpent, and they're all pulling him to churn the ocean. And then there's the pot of Amrita that comes out, and everybody wants it, of course. And then so Vishnu, he comes to help because then the Asuras get the pot eventually. They manage to get it. So then Vishnu decides to help the Devas out, understandably. And how does he do that? By appearing as this extraordinarily beautiful, charming young woman. What better way to bewilder someone? And there's a very elaborate description of her in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? She's like playing with a ball, and she's got this cloth that's like blowing in the wind and showing her body, and so she goes like bouncing this ball to the asuras and distracts them, pretty easily, and manages to get the pot of nectar and delivers it, right? And then to the devas. Then we hear Shiva, they called Lord Shiva. What was Shiva's part in all this? They asked him to drink the poison. Like Shiva always gets called for the hard jobs. But they didn't invite him for like the pot of Amrita. They just asked him to drink the poison. So anyhow, Lord Shiva, he's curious. He heard about this Mohini Murti, and so he asks Lord Vishnu, can you show me that form? And Vishnu's like, are you sure? Are you ready for that? And Shiva says, yes, I'd like to see. And so then Vishnu assumes that form again, and Lord Shiva loses his mind, overcome by the beauty of this Mohini Murti. So he goes chasing after that Mohini Murti, and Parvati's right there, but she gives a forgiving smile, because Gurudev tells this story like to illustrate how powerful lust can be. Jai Shri Hari Hara Jai. Very beautiful deity. So you can see, right, the white side is holding the trident of Lord Shiva, and the black side, the chakra, the disc of Lord Vishnu. Jai, thank you so much for showing us that. So beautiful. So we would go there on the third day of Parikrama. And then there was another, and there's a Gaudiya, then moving on to another island. I don't remember which one, but then there's another temple we would go to, and I cannot remember the name, but it's connected with one great king who received teachings of pure devotion from Narada, and Saraswati Thakur established a Gaudiya there.
Sumundargarh.
Sorry, what did you say, Prabhu?
Sumundargarh.
Yes. No, not Samudragar. Samudragar is on the fourth day. Samudragar is the fourth day, but there's another place. Let me see if I can find it there. On the third day, there's another place. Suvarna Bihar. That's it. He's called Suvarna Sen was his name. Yeah. Then Samudragar, that's another king. Oh yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Suvarna Bihar. It's here on the map. Yeah. So he was another king, and he had some instructions from Narada, and there's quite an extensive section in Navadvip Mahatmya describing this meeting with Narada, who enlightens him, and he becomes a great devotee. And then Nrsimhapali, that there's this ancient deity of Nrsimhadev there, and it's said that Nrsimhadev, after he killed Hiranyakashipu, which is in South India, well, what we call South India nowadays, then it was here that he rested. So this was a place where he rested. And it's called Nrsimhapali. It's also known as Devapali, because we hear that many of the Devas, they came to honor Nrsimhadev. They gathered there that time. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gives a very wonderful explanation that he says Nabadwip and also Vrindavan, they have this position of unique importance because they are like the capital in the spiritual world. And so just like in a capital city of a country, all the different districts of the country have some connection, some representation in the capital. So you will also find because Navadvip is the capital of the spiritual world, then all the devas, they're like coming and paying tribute to that central place and that central deity. So all the devas, they also have their place in Navadvip. So Nrsimhadev is also there, and all the holy places, they also have their place in the capital, right? And another wonderful thing, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and many of you know this, of course, we hear Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had this vision, right? When he was staying in Godrumadip, he observed that every day, early in the morning, at the same time, there was a breeze that would come from Nrsimhapali going towards Mayapur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his inner vision, he identified that this is actually Nrsimhadev going to attend the arati, the morning arati of Mahaprabhu in Mayapur. That was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's divine vision. And so here in Nrsimhapali, this would be the conclusion of our third day of Nabadwip Dhām Parikrama. And then the fourth day, of course, there are some other places. I'm just mentioning like the main principal places. There would be other places too, smaller places we would go to. And the fourth day, the principal places, there's this Samudragar that Ramananda Prabhu mentioned. There's one story with another ancient king, which is a bit elaborate, so I won't go into it now. But then there's also Champahati. And this is a place where Jayadev Goswami stayed. It's also, remember, we also all have to remember, right, Nabadwip is non-different from Vrindavan. So every place in Vrindavan has its place in corresponding place in Nabadwip. And so, as I understand that, that Champahati, the champak flower, there were many beautiful champak flowers that grew there. And I believe that was connected with the pastimes of the gopis and Radha Krishna. But then now, currently, there are these beautiful deities, and they're Gaur Gadadhar deities. There are not many Gaur Gadadhar deities because it's a very fine and exclusive conception, this conception of worshiping Gauranga Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar, who is the avatar of Radharani and Gaura Leela. There are only, 3 or 4 that are worshipped. Not many, but these were established by the younger brother of Gadadhar Pandit. What is his name? Do you remember, Suvasini Didi? Pandit, younger brother. I always forget his name. Vaninath, that's right. Vaninath is the brother of Gadadhar Pandit, Vaninath. So he established these deities. This was also in the time of Mahaprabhu, and which is also special because there were only a few deities that were worshipped in the time of Mahaprabhu. So Vishnu Priya's deity is one, these are another. And Ananda, can you see? Yes, oh, thank you so much. I was going to ask this. Here they are, so beautiful, those deities. Jai Shishi Gaur Gadadhar Ki Jai. And this temple was very dear to Srila Saraswati Thakur, and he personally took responsibility for this temple. We hear, for whatever reason, there was a lot of dispute around the ownership and who had the control of this temple. All kinds of things went on, but Saraswati Thakur, he at a certain point he said, I'll just do the seva. So Saraswati Thakur wasn't given any like recognition or like legal place there for running the temple, but he actually like practically took care of the place and the deities. And there was one disciple in particular who resided there for several decades. He became the main Sevite there. And he was very close with Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Govinda Maharaj. Sat Prasangananda was his name. There's one, he was known as Satish for short. And you'll hear, in some of Gurudev's talks, he mentioned him. And they were very close, very, very close. Like they would joke with him. And, I heard Gurudev once saying like how Satish, he would like tease them that you're so poor, you can't even afford a toilet, at our mat, like they were very close. And there was another time that because there were all these weird politics and opposition going on, that some locals were like putting these weird hexes on this Sat Prasangananda. So he was being haunted, he was being attacked. And at a certain point, he went to Srila Sridhar Maharaj for shelter, like, please save me from these entities. He hadn't slept in like weeks or something. And so he went to Srila Sridhar Maharaj once asking for shelter. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj told him, you come and sleep in my room, no ghost can touch you here. And so he did that. He slept in Srila Sridhar Maharaj's room, and from that day, he was not disturbed. There's actually a lecture. It's on our website. What a great Vaishnava. He glorified Srila Govinda Maharaj, who's his junior, so extensively. And there's one lecture, you'll see it's published on our Mott website. I think he gave it on the occasion of one of Gurudev's appearance days, and like extensively glorifying Srila Govinda Maharaj, telling stories about Srila Govinda Maharaj, really wonderful Vaishnava. So he was the Sevite there for like decades, and worshiping and taking care of these deities and their temple. And so we would go there on the fourth day, and we would also go to the birthplace of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, right? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, an important presence in Mahaprabhu's pastimes. He was actually born in Nabadwīp, right? And later became this great celebrated scholar in Puri. So Saraswati Thakur established a Gaudiya Math there. So we would go there. And then another very important place we would go to is the birthplace of Vrindavan Das Thakur, the author of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. And so we would go, and Saraswati Thakur also established a Gaudiya Math there, lovely, beautiful Gaudiya Math. And that would be the conclusion of the whole of our Nabadwīp Dhām Parikrama, the place of Vrindavan Das Thakur. And his deities are there, as I recall. He was born there, Mamgachi, it is called, Mamgachi. And then later he moved, right? He traveled with Nityananda and he settled in Denor, which is right next to Srila, just a few minutes down the road from Srila Govinda Maharaj's birthplace, Bamampar, and that's where he wrote Chaitanya Bhagavat. But he was actually born here in Mamgachi. And so how fortunate we are, right, that all these places have been identified, that they are continued, their maintenance, their care is continuing, and they're still being honored and worshipped to this day. So these are the main places. There are other places too, but it's really, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's pointed out, right, what is the reason for going to these places? It's not just for eye exercise or leg exercise, but to hear the teachings of pure devotion that are connected with these places, right? And the holy saints and that are associated with these places, the forms of the Lord that are associated with these places, and they're all enriching our understanding and increasing our feelings of attachment, right? So really we go to these places to hear, right? That is the seeing comes through hearing, right? As our gurus have taught us, real darshan comes through hearing. And so going to these places, it gives us a more vivid sense, feeling, oh, this is all real, these things all happen, right? But principally our concern is with hearing the messages that are connected with these places. So today I'm happy in some virtual way we could have some remembrance. And then finally, the big day is Gaur Purnima, right? When the golden moon of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rises in this world. And it's an eclipse day, right? Which is generally considered inauspicious, but this is the nature of divinity, nirguna, that it overrides anything saguna, anything of a material nature. So Mahaprabhu is seeing, an eclipse generally in India is considered inauspicious, but actually on that day, because people have some fear of this inauspiciousness, they're all chanting and taking shelter of the holy name. And so Mahaprabhu thought, actually, this is the most wonderful time to appear. And so he appears on the eclipse, lunar eclipse, in the midst of all this chanting that's going on. Traditionally, people will come and gather around holy rivers in particular and engaging in loud chanting. And so this was the atmosphere Mahaprabhu chose to appear in. And in our temple, this, we'd have a whole day of fasting and seva, and then he appears at the time of the moonrise around the, like twilight time, evening. And so there'd be like a whole build up throughout the day. The program would start around 4. And then at the conclusion, we would sing these wonderful verses that are in Chaitanya Charitamrita describing Mahaprabhu's appearance. And there's one verse which I like so much, and Kaviraj Goswami is saying that, he says, when, it's like his angle on why there's a lunar eclipse. He says, when the golden moon of the beautiful spotless golden moon of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was appearing, then the ordinary moon felt shyness and hid, right? Felt there's no need for his appearance. So Chandra Dev hid, in shyness. How can he stand before this spotless golden moon, this pockmarked moon? How can he stand in front of the golden moon? Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Jai, Srila Guru Deva. So here's Srila Govinda Maharaj presiding over this moment, right? And I expect this is just at the conclusion of chanting these prayers. Jai Srila Guru Deva. So then, there would be this whole build up, and then finally there would be an arati. And there's one line which I like very much in our ma, the Bengali devotees would sing, Gaur Chandra Yudai Holo. They would sing, Gaur Chandra Yudai Holo, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Means the appearance of Mahaprabhu has happened, right? The appearance of Gaur Chandra has happened. So they'd be like repeating this like over and over. And then finally the deities would reveal themselves, and there would be a grand arati at that time, like around 7 p.m. So really quite an extraordinary atmosphere. All right. Well, very happy we could have some shared remembrance at this holy time, joyful time. Jai Shri Nabadwīp Dhām Parikrama ki Jai. Shri Gaur Purnima ki Jai. Gaur Avirbhav ki Jai. Would anyone like to share any final thoughts? Maybe Suvasini Didi or anyone else? Would you like to share anything before we close for today?
No, thank you, Vishaka. Just to have that, through the virtual, going through all the places, it feels like you're there, going. Yeah, it's so nice remembering all those places. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly planning it, but it's happened spontaneously. And special thanks to Ananta Krishna for sharing all the photos.
Yes,
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we can all feel like we're there in one way.
Yeah.
If we are remembering these places, remembering, our lords, our gurus, then we are there, right? That is the nature of divinity. There's not the limitation of time, place, circumstance, right? But with our heart, with our mind, we can connect. So I'm very happy, so grateful to have all of your association. That was one thing I wanted to say too, right? Sankirtan, right? Together. This is the dharma of the age, right? Not solo kirtan, but sankirtan. And so that's one of the things that makes it so powerful, when we're going out on Parikrama like that, but also in a virtual way, being able to come together like this, that's also inviting, grace in a more powerful way, So I'm very, very grateful to all of you for facilitating this gathering and remembrance of all of these divine topics and divine guardians, remembering our divine guardians. Jai Shri Shri Guru Garanga Gandharva Govinda Sundar Ju Ki Jai, Shri Nabadwīp Dhām Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Itai Gaur Premanande, Haribo. Wish you all an inspired remembrance over these next few days, and look forward to seeing you next time. Well, let's